Judge's heartwarming silence revealed after discovering the incredible truth about the prosecutor. In the small Midwest town of Maplewood, a courtroom brimming with tension buzzed with whispers. Judge Ellen Harper, a figure who's embodied justice for 30 years, stood at her bench, ready to preside over a case that would unravel everything she believed in. David Matthews, the town's prosecutor, seemed confident, but the deep lines of worry on his face betrayed him. Today was more than just a trial. It was a battle for the soul of two families. As Ellen caught David's gaze, she felt an unfamiliar tug at her chest. This man was the town's enforcer, but what about his own demons? A single father striving for redemption, or a man clinging to the shadows of a tumultuous past? The whispers grew louder. He came from nothing, someone muttered. You can't trust someone like him. Each comment laced with bias stabbed at the fabric of community that Ellen held dear. She thought about her own kids, proud and sheltered, as the defense painted a portrait of David, a man who'd sacrificed so much for his daughter, Lily. Late nights spent studying, missed moments at school events, and heartaches that never faded. Ellen's eyes moved to Lily, a small girl with big hopeful eyes, clutching a faded photo of her late mother. The unyielding love between father and daughter was palpable. It struck her like a lightning bolt. Could the weight of his past truly condemn him? In that moment, an unexpected turn of events unfolded. Piece by piece, the defense revealed David's quiet acts of kindness, referring former inmates to jobs, offering second chances to those society had deemed unworthy. The courtroom fell into an awed hush. Ellen felt her heart twist. Stereotypes, once so easily accepted, began to shatter as they staggered into the harsh light of reality. This isn't just a case, she mused, lost in this profound reflection. It's about understanding. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the silence thickened, Ellen's heart raced. I could see it now through the eyes of her community. Justicar or not, David was a man, shaped by love and loss, battling against judgmental eyes. She witnessed the room holding its breath, not just for the verdict but for that moment of realization. Justice was conflated with compassion, but could they coexist? The echoes of her own biases screamed inside her head. She let her gaze drift back to David, who looked vulnerable yet strong, like a ship weathering an unrelenting storm. Unease knotted within her as she pondered the impact of her decisions. Suddenly everything felt like a vast ocean of feelings: doubt, empathy, hope crashing against the shores of her judgment. Would she stand firmly on principles of black and white, or break down barriers for understanding? As the anticipatory stillness clung to the air, the room leaned in, hearts pounding as they awaited the weight of her decision. Would they witness a shift towards compassion, or remain bound by the iron chains of prejudice? In this moment, one question lingered. How would Judge Harper define justice, and could she truly reshape the lives of David and Lily, as well as the very community that stood before her, waiting for a verdict that might just set everyone free? As the air in the courtroom hung thick with anticipation, Judge Harper felt an unexpected surge of conviction. She glanced back at David, whose eyes, usually so fierce and determined, now held a vulnerability that tugged at her heart. For years she had been the unwavering symbol of law, her decisions defined by rules, black and white. But this case was decidedly gray. Your Honor, David's voice broke the silence, tremulous yet steady. I stand before you not just as the prosecutor, but as a father. Every decision I make is for my daughter. I want her to believe in a world where justice is meaningful. There was a catch in his throat that made those in the gallery shift uncomfortably, as if the weight of his words had settled into their bones. Ellen felt an overwhelming mixture of empathy and responsibility. David's narrative was one she could relate to: a single father trying to navigate a path through the chaos of life, reminding her of her own struggles balancing career and family. It shook her to realize that the courtroom wasn't just a stage for legal battles, but a mirror reflecting the collective humanity of everyone present. The defense lawyer wrapped up her closing arguments, but Ellen found it difficult to focus on the words. Instead, her mind turned to Lily, who sat still and silent, eyes wide as the world threatened to swallow her whole. Ellen remembered the times when her own children had looked at her, seeking assurance or perhaps forgiveness. How would Lily feel if her father was convicted? Would she see the world as a place where love was overshadowed by fear and distrust? Ladies and gentlemen, she began slowly, her voice echoing off the walls, today we're not just deciding a case. We are choosing how we, as a community, define love, hope, and redemption. Around the courtroom, murmurs swelled. This was not what they had expected. They had come prepared for a verdict steeped in rigid lines of right and wrong, but now the specter of compassion lingered. Ellen felt buoyed by this revelation, yet the weight of expectation bore down on her as well. In that moment, she considered her own upbringing, the stories her parents had told her about righting wrongs, about believing in people when others wouldn't. What if David wasn't just the man they thought he was? What if he could be something more? As she looked again at David, his hands gripping the table as if it were his anchor, she couldn't ignore the enormity of the choice ahead of her. The courtroom buzzed with restless energy, but she felt suspended in time, the tension tangible. Ellen took a deep breath and glanced at the jury, their expressions mirroring her internal conflict. Could they also see the kaleidoscope of possibilities? Could they understand that, while actions hold consequences, people also hold stories that deserve to be told? As she prepared to speak, the door creaked open, and the bailiff stepped inside, frowning at a note held tightly in his hand. He approached her quickly, eyes darting between the paper and Judge Harper. What news could be so urgent that it invaded the sanctuary of the court's deliberation? Your Honor, he interrupted softly. In that moment, the walls of Maplewood's courtroom trembled with worry. What was about to shift this delicate balance? Ellen's heart raced. The weight of the past began to blur with the uncertainties of tomorrow. What decision awaited her within the pages of this new twist? Would she stand for justice? Or would she be forced to redefine what justice truly meant? Ellen's heart pounded as she took the note from the bailiff, the paper trembling in her hands. She blinked at the words, trying to process their implications. Her mind raced. What could possibly change the course of the trial now? The courtroom had fallen into a hush so deep that even a pin drop would echo. Is this necessary? She whispered, her eyes darting over to David, who looked bewildered. The change in the atmosphere was palpable. Everyone felt it shift, like the air before a storm. Your Honor, the bailiff said, lowering his voice as if to keep the urgency contained, it's from the department. They've received new evidence, and it's critical. A deep breath grounded her, and she nodded, signaling him to continue. She needed clarity, and fast. Whatever was on that note could either seal David's fate, or rewrite the narrative entirely. Bring it to me, she commanded firmly, her authority returning amidst the chaos. He handed the note over, and she quickly glanced at the details. Her pulse quickened further as she processed the implications. It spilled secrets about the case that could shatter what they thought they knew. That information, it changes everything, she murmured under her breath, feeling the weight of the courtroom's expectations settle onto her shoulders. The defense attorney was shifting in her seat, clearly anxious. David's eyes scanned her face for answers, his desperation unmistakable. Ellen raised her hand as if to pause the looming storm of questions, signaling for calm. Members of the jury, she announced, her voice regaining its steadiness. I must inform you that new evidence has come to light. I need to suspend this session momentarily while I assess its validity. The murmuring swelled again, a mix of disbelief and curiosity spilling into the air. Ellen turned to David, who was trying to mask his worry. We will get to the bottom of this, she assured him quietly, but even she wobbled under the weight of uncertainty. As she exited the courtroom to consult with the bailiff in a private area, her mind was a storm. What could possibly be the new evidence? A witness? A piece of overlooked surveillance footage? The stakes felt higher than ever. Your Honor, the bailiff said slowly, glancing around as if to ensure no one was listening. They found a video. It was recorded around the same time as the incident in question. It shows something that it changes everything. Ellen felt her breath hitch. She understood the implications of what he was saying. Could it possibly show a different side? Unanswered questions began to spiral in her mind. But what does it say? She pressed, feeling a mix of hope and dread flicker painfully within her. It's about David, he replied, hesitating. And it suggests a connection with the defendant that was never considered something personal. Ellen's heart dropped. A connection? It was one thing to fight for his innocence through a moral lens, but personal connections intertwined with legal proceedings could change the perception entirely. This could lead to a darker narrative unfolding than she had anticipated. Back in the courtroom, she faced the jury, suppressing the tide of emotion that threatened to spill. This was more than just a case. It was a reflection of trust, family, and the choices they had all made. Ladies and gentlemen, the trial will continue. However, I will be hearing this evidence before I allow your deliberation to resume. As the gravity of the moment settled over the room, Ellen found herself wandering in a haze of thoughts. It felt like she was standing on the edge of something momentous. How would David react to this new revelation? The courtroom door swung closed behind her, and echoes of uncertainty mixed with anticipation filled the air. What truths would the video unveil? Would it bring peace, or would it unravel the threads of their shared struggle? Ellen took a deep breath as she stepped back into the courtroom, feeling the weight of all eyes on her. The atmosphere crackled with anticipation, the air thick with anxiety and curiosity. David's gaze held hers, pleading for reassurance. She opened her mouth to speak, but the words tangled in her throat. The judge, an older man with a stern expression, glanced down at the gavel resting before him, his hand poised over it. "Is the new evidence ready for presentation?" he asked, breaking the heavy silence. "Your Honor, we are awaiting further confirmation about its classification," Ellen replied, attempting to keep her voice steady. "However, I believe it is imperative that we view it as soon as possible. It holds significant relevance to the case." The judge nodded slowly, his eyes squinting slightly as he studied her face, perhaps searching for any sign of panic. Ellen dared to return his gaze, holding a veneer of professionalism layered over her spiraling emotions. She could feel the entire courtroom's eyes boring into her, waiting for clarity. After a moment that felt like an eternity, the judge gestured the bailiff forward. "Bring forth the video." Ellen felt an electric surge through her. This was at the moment that could redefine everything that had come before it. As the courtroom staff prepared the screen, whispers filled the air again. She exchanged a glance with David, who looked both hopeful and terrified, his fingers twitching nervously at his sides. Once the video screen lit up, the room fell silent again. The footage began to play, a grainy, shaky recording from a security camera. The timestamp was faded, but it was evident it was captured just before the incident. Ellen leaned in, her heart pounding as the scenes unfolded. She watched people moving about, unaware that their fates would soon intertwine in such tragic ways. And then it happened. An unfamiliar figure appeared, standing too close to the scene where David had been. The figure gestured animatedly, speaking to someone out of view. A chill crept through her. Moments passed, and Ellen squinted as the camera shifted slightly. It captured David stepping into the frame. But what struck Ellen was not just David's presence. It was the unmistakable emotion on his face as he motioned toward the unknown figure. Was that fear? Recognition? The tension in the room thickened. Ellen felt her heart race, blood pounding in her ears. Everyone was wrapped in the story unfolding, their expressions shifting between confusion and shock. The video continued, revealing snippets of conversations Ellen could barely hear, but felt acutely. When the clip came to an end, the echoes of whispers filled the courtroom again. "What was that?" she heard someone murmur. David turned to her, his confusion mirrored on his face. "Your Honor," Ellen said, her voice rising above the clamor. "This footage implies a connection I did not anticipate, yet it's crucial we examine it further." I believe we might be witnessing something entirely unexplored regarding David. The judge's face darkened, and he nodded solemnly. Very well. How should we proceed? We need to unpack what this means for the integrity of this case. Ellen felt the weight of his words, the gravity of the situation pressing down on her. David's fate now hinged on the potential for a misunderstanding that could change everything. As she faced the jury, their brows furrowed with uncertainty, she gathered her thoughts quickly. I propose we find the figure in the video and understand their relationship to the incident. There are layers here that need unraveling, she said, her voice gaining strength. This might reveal the truth lurking beneath the surface. The judge nodded slowly, considering her proposal. Let's take a break, and then we shall reconvene. As the gavel struck, she felt an unexpected flutter of hope through the chaos. She had always believed in the truth's capacity to set things right. But what if this truth was more complicated than she imagined? She turned to David as the courtroom began to disperse. We need to find out who that person is, she said, urgency lacing her words. This could be what exonerates you. A flicker of hope ignited in David's eyes, yet with it, doubt lingered. But what if it exposes something worse? He whispered, the fight in him momentarily dimmed. Ellen stood frozen, the weight of their situation heavy in the air. What shadows would this connection unveil? Would it bring freedom or further entrap them? The door swung closed behind them, echoing with uncertainty. What choices lay ahead as they dove deeper into the unknown? Ellen stepped out of the courtroom, the buzzing crowd spilling into the hallway like a rushing tide. The air was thick with speculation, and she could overhear snippets of conversations swirling around her. Words like evidence and undeniable echoed in her mind as she tried to focus on the next steps. The urgency to uncover the mystery wrapped around that shadowy figure gnawed at her. Ellen! David's voice cut through the noise. She turned to him, and the fear in his eyes made her stomach twist. We need to figure out who that person was, he urged, anxiety lacing his words. What if they know something that could incriminate me even further? No, she said firmly, grabbing his hand. We can't think like that. We need to approach this as a chance to find evidence that could clear you. Focus on that. He nodded, but his gaze drifted, haunted by unspoken worries. Ellen felt the weight of their situation surrounding them, almost suffocating. She pulled him closer, her resolve firming. We'll start by retracing your steps that day. You might recall anything that could lead us to them. David took a deep breath and exhaled, trying to conjure memories from that fateful day. I was at the coffee shop across the street, he said slowly. I saw someone outside, talking wildly, but I didn't think much of it. I just wanted my drink. Do you remember anything about their appearance? Ellen pressed, her heart racing. If they could find that person, it might unlock the truth. He furrowed his brow, frustration thickening his voice. I don't know, they had dark clothing, a hood maybe? I was distracted, trying to get out of there. A pang of worry struck her. Was that all they had to go on? Let's head back there. It's a start, she said, determination clawing at her insides. The two made their way to the coffee shop. As they entered, the familiar smell of brewing coffee enveloped them, but Ellen felt unmoored, every face in the room turning to regard them. She led David to the counter, where a barista stood polishing cups. Excuse me, do you remember seeing a person hanging around here a few weeks ago? Ellen asked, urgency spilling from her words. They might be involved in the case against my client. The barista looked contemplative, scratching his head. Yeah, I remember, he shifted uneasily, then leaned closer. They were acting weird, but I didn't think much of it at the time. They kept looking at the street, like waiting for someone. Did they say anything? Ellen pressed, her heart racing. Not to me. But I heard them talking to someone else. Something about money. David stiffened beside her. Money? He whispered, his expression pale. Ellen turned back to the barista. Can you describe this person further? Anything at all? The barista shrugged, but a thought sparked in his eyes. There was a guy. Wore a green jacket. I think he mentioned a car, something like a Jaguar. I remember because it's a nice car, right? Do you remember the license plate? David interjected, his voice edged with urgency. Sorry, dude, but it was just a glimpse. Plenty of cars parked out there. Ellen felt a surge of frustration, but also hope. They had a lead. Any connection to this green jacket could be pivotal. Thank you, she said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her. David stared at her, a mix of worry and relief etched on his face. What if this leads to more trouble? The fear crept back into his voice. It also might save you, Ellen replied, her eyes intense. We need to follow this lead. We can handle whatever comes next together. As they stepped back outside, the weight of uncertainty felt lighter. Yet with each passing moment, the shadows of doubt hung thick in the air. What other truths would emerge as they probed deeper? The world around them buzzed with life, but for them, it felt isolated. The enormity of their task loomed large. Ellen took a deep breath, her mind racing with possibilities. What would happen when they finally tracked down the figure in the green jacket? Their future depended on it. A distant rumble of thunder echoed overhead, and a moment of tension hung between them. Ellen clutched David's hand tighter. Whatever happens, she said softly, we're in this together. But all the while, a whisper nagged at her. What if their pursuit led to revelations that could alter everything they thought they knew? The rain began to fall, gently at first, forming a soft curtain in front of them as Ellen and David navigated the slick streets. Each droplet seemed to mimic the tension building within her. Thoughts raced. Where to find this person in the green jacket? How would they react when confronted? Ellen's grip tightened around David's hand, as if her warmth could push away the uncertainty plaguing them. The coffee shop felt like a distant memory already, even though they had just left. We should check the area around the coffee shop, she finally said, breaking the silence that had settled between them. Maybe someone saw something else. David nodded, though his eyes told her he was still lost in worry. They moved forward, stepping over puddles, the sky a chaotic canvas above them. Each strike of lightning brought a fleeting clarity, illuminating their thoughts, daring them to see what lay ahead. I can't shake the feeling that I'm being watched, David said, glancing over his shoulder frequently. Ellen's heart raced at his admission. Fear had a way of twisting everything into shadows. Let us focus on what we can prove, she encouraged, her voice steady despite her own rising anxiety. If we can find a way to connect the dots, it might lead us somewhere. They walked in silence again until she spotted a small alley beside the coffee shop. It felt like a path to stumble upon something significant. What about there? Are you sure? David hesitated, looking at the darkened entrance. Let us give it a try, she insisted, feeling a flicker of intuition. With a reluctant nod, they approached the alley. The narrow space was littered with discarded wrappers and empty coffee cups, remnants of a busy world that seemed oblivious to their quest. Halfway through, Ellen saw something spark in the dim light, something metallic buried under a pile of leaves. She crouched down and pulled it out, a small keychain, clearly marked with a green emblem that matched the jacket. David, look at this, she held it up, a surge of hope pulsing through her. Where did that come from? He asked, leaning closer. I don't know. But it has to mean something. She turned it over in her hands, heartbeat loud in her ears. Maybe it belongs to the person we're looking for. What if it's a trap? David's voice dropped, laced with doubt. Even if it is, we have to take the chance, Ellen replied, a steely determination sharpening her features. Just as David opened his mouth to protest, another rumble of thunder echoed above, closer this time. It's getting worse out here, he muttered as they stood up, rain drenching them. Let us find shelter, Ellen suggested, urgency swelling. They ducked into a nearby storefront, a small thrift shop selling second-hand clothes and antiques. Undeterred by the clutter, she began looking around, hoping to find more clues or at least someone who could help them. The bell above the door chimed softly as they entered, but Ellen's attention was quickly drawn to a shadowy figure in the corner. The figure was dressed in a familiar green jacket, speaking intently with a nervous-looking man. Her heart sank. David, she whispered, tugging him close. That's them. Before he could react, a loud shout erupted from the street outside. Hey! You in the green jacket! Ellen's heart stopped. David's eyes widened, but she didn't let fear paralyze her. They had to act. Stay here, she said, readying herself to confront whatever awaited them. She had to know the truth, whatever the cost. The tension in the air crackled like the storm overhead, and Ellen took one determined step forward, ready to dive into the unknown. Little did they know, the revelations they were about to unearth would spiral their lives into chaos until the lines between safety and danger blurred in a way they could never have anticipated. Ellen felt her heart racing as she moved closer to the shadowy figure in the green jacket. The shouting outside had thrown them into a tempest of urgency. She barely registered David's hand tightening around her arm as he moved to follow her, concern etched all over his face. But she couldn't let fear cloud her focus. Not now. The figure turned, and for a brief moment their eyes locked. The stranger's expression flickered from surprise to recognition before they darted their gaze away, and that shift sent a chill down her spine. Something was off. She could feel it. Ellen, wait, David hissed, but she was already bolting toward the figure. The thrill of the chase overshadowed her worries. The truth was within reach, and she couldn't back down now. Hey! She called, her voice slicing through the rumble of thunder. The figure hesitated, and in that split second she caught a glimpse of their face, a mix of fear and something softer, something almost pleading. I need to talk to you. A tense silence followed. The stranger exchanged a quick glance with the nervous man, an unspoken conversation, perhaps before they took a step back, raising their hands defensively. I didn't mean any harm, the figure said, their voice shaking slightly, almost drowned out by the rain hitting the glass storefront. Then why were you talking to that guy outside? David chimed in, taking a step forward. Because he was asking questions. The figure's eyes darted to the entrance. Their panic was palpable, shimmering like water on the pavement. I didn't know what else to do. Ellen's heart softened, but her resolve hardened. We're not here to hurt you. We just want to understand what's going on. You have something we're looking for, she said, holding up the keychain. The figure's expression changed. They seemed to register the keychain with astonishment. Where did you find that? In an alley by the coffee shop, Ellen replied, the urgency of their conversation drawing her closer. It's yours, isn't it? You're the person we're searching for. Yes, they admitted, dropping their hands and stepping closer. But I didn't mean to get involved in this. You have to believe me. Then tell us what's going on, David urged, his tone shifting from hostile to curious. We can help you, but we need the truth. As they stood there, their surroundings faded, rain drummed on the rooftop, and the tension thickened like fog enveloping a city. The stranger glanced around nervously as if the eyes of the world were upon them. I can't hear, they finally muttered, glancing back at the corner where the nervous man had been. Not like this. Then let us get out of here, Ellen suggested, her pulse quickening. We can find a place to talk. Somewhere safe. The figure nodded slowly, and just like that, a plan began to form. As they stepped outside, a cacophony erupted around them. The nervous man shouted, drawing the attention of several onlookers, some of whom began moving towards them. Panic swelled within Ellen as she took the stranger's hand. Follow me. They dashed into the rain, weaving through the streets like shadows escaping into the night. The adrenaline surged, blurring the distinction between safety and danger. Ellen could hardly breathe, her body thrumming with the weight of uncertainty, but she wouldn't look back. Where are we going? David called, running right beside her, struggling to keep pace. Somewhere we can talk. With every step, the reality of their situation deepened. Who was this person in the green jacket? What truth could they reveal that would change their understanding of everything? As they sprinted into the storm, Ellen couldn't shake the feeling that they were racing not just away from danger, but towards something much more significant. And then, in that moment of frantic rush, Ellen felt a powerful connection building, a sense of purpose ignited by fear and determination. Whatever lay ahead, it was a journey they needed to take together. The chase wasn't over, but it was only the beginning of a truth they were desperate to uncover. They turned a corner, and just Like that, the atmosphere shifted. Ellen's heart fluttered as she spotted an old, dimly lit bookstore. A flickering light beckoned from within a refuge where secrets could be shared. Would the answers waiting inside bring clarity or raise more questions? Ellen reached the door of the bookstore first, her hand trembling as she pushed it open. The familiar scent of musty pages and aged wood wrapped around her like a warm blanket. She stepped inside, pulling the stranger along behind her. David followed closely, the rain still pouring outside, creating a dull roar against the glass. The comforting sound of the bell chimed above the door, and the dim light cast a golden hue over the cluttered shelves, filled with towering stacks of books. Ellen turned to the figure in the green jacket, whose name she still didn't know. "What do you want to tell us?" she asked, her voice a whisper now, heavy with hope and urgency. The stranger leaned against a bookcase, their expression shifting between anxiety and relief. "We can't stay long," they breathed. "If anyone sees me here, it could be dangerous, for all of us." Ellen felt a knot in her stomach. "Why? What are you involved in?" She scanned the store, half expecting to see the nervous man burst through the door at any moment. "I was just trying to find out the truth," the figure said, their voice shaky but passionate. "And I got in over my head." "That keychain? It's connected to something bigger, something that shouldn't be out in the open." David stepped closer, his eyes narrowing. "Bigger? What kind of something?" "The last owner was killed," they blurted out, glancing over their shoulder. "I didn't realize who I was getting involved with until it was too late. The keychain, it belonged to them. It holds information documents that could expose a network of corruption or worse." Ellen's heart pounded. "What do you mean worse?" "I mean lives are at stake," the stranger replied, their eyes wide with fear. "It connects to a ring of people who will do anything to silence others. I thought I could help, but I'm in way too deep." David raised an eyebrow. "So you've seen something? You know something that could what?" Their voice broke with desperation. "Could change everything?" "Yes. But I'm not safe here. I've been being watched since the moment I found out." Ellen felt her pulse quickening again. She had to think. "Then what do we do?" "We can't just please." The stranger interrupted, gripping Ellen's arm. "You need to help me get this information to the right people. I don't want to be a target anymore." "Right people? Who?" David asked skeptically. "How do we know we can trust you?" The stranger took a deep breath. "I know it's a leap of faith. But I have evidence stored in a place safe from prying eyes. If you help me find it, it'll show everything. I just need a chance." Ellen exchanged a glance with David. The stakes were rising rapidly. But this wasn't just about them anymore. It was about justice, truth, and perhaps saving lives. "Okay," Ellen finally said, resolve fueling her voice. "We'll help you. But we need a plan." The stranger nodded, visibly relieved. "It's hidden. In an old warehouse, not far from here. But we'll have to move quickly. They've been tracking me." Suddenly, the bell over the door tinkled again, and Ellen's heart raced as she turned. The nervous man stood in the doorway, eyes scanning the room. Something turned icy in her gut. "What do we do?" she whispered, stepping toward the stranger. "Hide now," they hissed. Ellen pressed herself into the shadows, gripped by the pull of fear and adrenaline. What was going to happen now? Would they be discovered before they even had a chance to uncover the truth? As the newcomer entered, the store seemed to hold its breath, every moment stretching like elastic. What secrets would unravel in the next heartbeat? And would they be ready for the storm ahead? Ellen's heart thundered in her chest as she ducked behind a shelf, her instincts screaming at her to stay put. She peered through the narrow gap of books, her eyes darting to the nervous man who had just stepped inside. His face was pale, and he raked a hand through his damp hair, signaling his unease as he scanned the store. The stranger beside her tensed, their breath hitching. "If he finds me here, we're all in trouble," they whispered urgently. David positioned himself behind a stack of cookbooks, his expression a mix of concern and determination. "We need to distract him," he said softly. Ellen nodded, her mind racing. She wanted to scream at the stranger to run, but panic gripped her tongue. The rain outside intensified, drumming frantically against the roof. If they could just get a little time. Hey! She called out, her voice unexpectedly steady despite the chaos inside her. The nervous man swung around, his eyes narrowing as he focused on the sound. Can you help me? He hesitated, and for a moment, Ellen thought he might turn and bolt. Instead, he approached with caution, his gaze flicking past her and then back to her. Are you okay? He asked, his voice shaky and low. Not really, Ellen said, feigning a tight smile. I'm just looking for a rare book, actually. Do you know where I could find it? His brow furrowed, confused by her sudden shift. What book? Maybe I can help, he replied, glancing nervously over his shoulder. The stranger next to her clenched their fists. This is risky, they whispered. Ellen shot them a glance, urging them to stay calm. I'll keep him talking, she promised, her heart hammering. Just make sure the evidence is safe. Yeah, right, David murmured from behind the cookbooks. So we'll just stand here and hope for the best. As the stranger inched around the shelves, Ellen felt a wave of camaraderie between them. This was about more than just survival. There was a bond forming, a courage igniting in the face of uncertainty. Could you point me to the historical section? Ellen pressed, feeling the seconds stretch like hours. It's about a scandal from the 1800s. I'm diving into a research project. Sure, the nervous man stammered, his guard faltering slightly. It's over there. He motioned with one hand, yet his eyes darted around the room as if assessing every shadow. Thanks, she replied, taking a cautious step toward him. What about you? You seem anxious. He swallowed hard, his expression turning more serious. Just trying to figure out who's still in this town, and what they're up to. Before Ellen could respond, the stranger edged toward the back of the store, ready to slip away unnoticed. Ellen's heartbeat quickened. Wait! She called out. What's your name? He hesitated one last time, but didn't he look back? Everyone just calls me Jake. And you guys, you need to be careful. Ellen's heart sank as the door swung shut behind him. Do you think he knows something? She murmured, turning back to David and the stranger. The stranger nodded, staring at the door. They can't find us here. We need to go now if we're going to find the evidence. Sudden realization hit Ellen like a cold splash of water. What if they're watching this place too? What if Jake was just sent here to lure us out? David took a step closer. Then we need to be smart about this. We can't go out the front. There's got to be an exit in the back. The weight of the ongoing danger pressed heavily on her. Their little world had expanded far beyond the sanctuary of the bookstore. They were now part of something they couldn't have imagined. Ellen exchanged glances, the urgency in the air thickening. Let us move, she said, her voice resolute. We have to take control before they do. As they prepared to find another exit, a loud crash echoed from the front of the store, shattering the tense silence. The air was electric. Did he bring someone with him? The stranger gasped. Ellen felt her breath hitch in her throat, a new wave of dread pouring over her. What had they stepped into? Would they find the truth? Or would it find them first? Heart pounding in her chest, Ellen exchanged a quick glance with David. The sound of the crash sent a wave of adrenaline through her, eclipsing all rational thoughts. They had to find a way out, and fast. The atmosphere of uncertainty hung like a heavy curtain, stifling their breaths as they prepared to face whatever chaos stirred at the collection of shelves. Back room? David suggested, his eyes darting toward a narrow hallway. Let us go. Ellen nodded fiercely, leading them through the shadowy passage as quietly as possible. They pushed past dusty stacks of forgotten novels, fingers brushing against the spines as if those stories could shield them from the unknown dangers lurking just beyond the doorway. The sound of footsteps grew louder, mixing with the soft patter of rain outside. Ellen's gut tightened as their own footsteps echoed in the too quiet hallway. We should be careful, she whispered urgently. We don't know how many people are out there. Through her fear, a spark of clarity ignited within her. This was about more than just survival. It was about understanding. Whatever this was, they had to face it together as a cohesive force, driving toward the truth that awaited them. As they stepped into the dimly lit back room, a warmth of familiarity enveloped them, a stark contrast to the chill of anxiety that had gripped them moments before. Ellen caught a glimpse of an old desk littered with papers, a relic of the past. The dim light highlighted the dust swirling in the air, reminiscent of buried secrets, just waiting to be uncovered. "Look!" David hurriedly gestured toward a locked cabinet against the far wall. "Maybe there's something in there." Ellen nodded, her instincts flaring with urgency. She approached, her heart racing as she fumbled with the lock. If they could get inside, they might find something truly vital. The lock crumbled under persistent pressure, the door creaking open to reveal rows of neatly filed folders. "Documents?" David's voice was barely above a whisper. "It could be evidence we need." With a rapid search, Ellen pulled out a folder marked Case Files. Its dingy cover hinted at age but felt heavy with promise. Inside, they revealed a net of connections, a map of contacts, overlapping incidents, and names that bore weight. Every revelation drawn out painted a mosaic of corruption in vibrant strokes. "I think we're onto something," Ellen breathed, flipping through the pages, her eyes landing on a name that wove through each line. "This is it. This is the proof we need to expose the truth about David's case and the network behind it." But just as hope began to swell, the violent crash echoed again from the front of the store, a reminder of the looming danger. "We don't have much time," David urged. "They could be here any moment." "Then let us make it count," Ellen said, her resolve steeling her. They couldn't let fear hinder their purpose any longer. "We take what we can and expose it. This isn't just about us any longer, it's about the lives affected by this." In a flurry of action, they gathered every file in the cabinet. The burden of each paper felt heavier than before. Each document was a lifeline, a glimmer of hope for their community. Suddenly, the sound of hurried footsteps approached. Ellen's heartbeat quickened, and she exchanged looks with David and the stranger. "They're closing in," she whispered. "Time to go." They crouched low as the door creaked open, their breath held tight. The nervous man stood silhouetted against the entryway, scanning the room with a frown. Ellen felt an icy mix of fear and determination grip her. "This way," she mouthed to David, gesturing to a narrow, darkened exit at the back of the room. They ducked low and slipped past the threshold, urgency propelling them toward safety. As they moved, Ellen couldn't shake the feeling that whatever they were leaving behind would haunt them. Emerging into the labyrinth of alleys behind the bookstore, the rain fell harder, blending with the adrenaline coursing through her veins. She could hear the murmur of voices from the bookstore. Jake was still looking for answers, but she hoped they'd keep quiet long enough for them to escape. "Where do we head next?" David asked, scanning the landscape filled with shadows and uncertainty. Ellen held onto the files, their weight grounding her. "We find a place to regroup. The police need to see this. We need to be careful about how we reveal what we've found." As they maneuvered through the back streets, it felt as if the world around them began to shift. This was no longer just a case. It was a battle for truth, justice, and the safety of everyone in Maplewood. A small town that had been quietly suffering, now ready to confront the shadows that lurked within its own borders. They reached a quiet park surrounded by tall trees, the rain creating a curtain of tranquility amidst the storm. Ellen felt the tension start to ease as she took a moment to look at David and the stranger. "We did it. We have the evidence," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Now it's time to put it into action." David nodded, his eyes shining with resolve. His transformation was palpable. A man once weathered by fear now emanated courage. And beside him, the stranger wore a blend of hope and uncertainty. Ellen took a deep breath. "We're in this together. Let us make sure our voices are heard." Under the shelter of the trees, they huddled and began to discuss their next steps, a defined mission blossoming from the chaos. Clarity emerged from the discussions, and for once, the storm felt promising. "Whatever happens next, we take it on together," she declared, a flood of warmth enveloping her while holding their gazes. They were no longer just a judge, a prosecutor, and a stranger. They had come together as allies, ready to fight for truth, and as hope ignited in their hearts, Ellen knew that their fight was worth it, for the truth would always shine brightest, even in the darkest corners of their stories. Together, they would rewrite the narrative of Maplewood, brick by brick, until all shadows would be illuminated. Now, as their paths forever intertwined, the reckoning approached. If you felt the intensity of this journey, if this story inspired you, you need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support, and ensure you don't miss our next exclusive story. Leave a like now to help feed the algorithm and help others discover this incredible transformation. Comment below with your reactions and feelings about the ending. What resonated with you? And please share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Don't wait not even one more second to spread the message. Your support matters, and only true fans understand the importance of stepping up for the channel.